Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and a lot of you might know about a film called Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation was a film that was made in the early part of the 20th century that a lot of people claim incited violence against black people because it presented black people in a certain way, a certain image that was beyond stereotypical, actually uh, borderline chaotic and obviously untrue. And it led to increases in the ranks of the Ku Klux Klan. It led to a lot of backlash from whites. And a person that reached out to me that wanted to talk about this a little bit and kind of reflect on how media affects the way black people are perceived is Mr. Zachary Rinkins. So first, I want to start off by asking my brother, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Dr. Watkins.
Good, good. Well, I'm glad you're here, man. It's great talking to you. You're down in sunny Florida.
Yes, sir.
All right, all right. And now you and I thought it was curious. I thought it was interesting that you wanted to talk about Birth of a Nation. Now, what sparked your interest in talking about this film, which has been around for about 100 years?
Yes, 2015 happens to be the 100-year anniversary of Birth of a Nation, a film that came out in 1915. And what's fascinating about it is I had the opportunity to study this as a student at Florida A&M University. And I had an African American in film class, and we explored the movie. And it really struck me some of the archetypes in that movie that still are perpetuated in media today and that perceive our identity and also the way other people perceive us. Five of those archetypes that were created in this movie were the black buck, the oversexed black person. It was also the black man that is dutiful to his white master or white boss. There's also the shiftless black man. There's also the incompetent black man, and there's also the black man, the threat of the black man wanting the white woman. And so those five archetypes continue to permeate the black media today, and it affects us in so many adverse ways.
That's very interesting. You say that. We talk about these images. So, I just think about some of the ones that you described, and it almost seems that not only are these images still prevalent in media, but it's almost as if we embrace some of these images. That we almost look at them
certainly
and,
we
and think that
embrace
this is who we
certainly
are.
we embrace some of these stereotypes, and it's unfortunate. Like even me at 32 years old, crafting my identity and maturing myself, I started to just really observe some of the things around me, observe some of the national media and some of the reports that are coming out. And one of the biggest things that really struck me was the fact that African American women tend to be the most undesired people in America. And I started to look at the data, and what the data tells us is that for every black man that gets an advanced degree, there's two black women. For every black man that purchases a home, there are two black women that's purchasing a home. So for all of those social, economic milestones, black women are typically lapping black men, but they tend to be the least likely to get married in America, even though we find data that's saying that they're among the most successful and among the most prosperous. And so you have to start to think about that. If we continue to look at media and consume media where there's rap music, some elements of rap music for the last 30 years that say that black women are undesirable, they're untrustworthy, they're unattractive, and things of that nature, we can begin to see how subconsciously this has been perpetuated, and why some of us are hesitant to marry black women, why some of us are hesitant to even see them as reliable partners, even though our reality is different than that.
Mm. It is interesting you say that. Now, I'm curious to know, or to ask you this: do you think that there are media images out there today that just kind of reflect some of these ideas that you mentioned about black women being undesirable, or black men being shiftless and lazy, or the black buck, things like that? I mean, what do you see in media today that makes you reflect on the birth of a nation to say, "Wow, 100 years later, we've got some of this still going on"?
Well, typically when we have town hall meetings within the black community all over America, they tend to become very emotional and very angry. And one of the biggest things people say is this legacy of slavery. It's the legacy of slavery that causes us to be in this particular position that we're in. And I have to strike that because right after slavery, during the Reconstruction period, we see what I consider the most successful black people in America, the most successful black people in the nation. If you look at a lot of our history and the narrative, it'll usually say the first black person to do this since Reconstruction, the first black person to do that since Reconstruction. During Reconstruction, you had black people that were millionaires back then. You had black people that owned hundreds of acres of land. And some of the baddest black people in America were from Mississippi. And so what we see is when there's the threat of black progress, a lot of times that there's typically as strong white resistance to that progress. And so that permeated in media. And so with Birth of a Nation, basically it revised history. But the response is that, look, if we give black people their humanity, if we give them access to resources, they may take all of our women. They may take all of our jobs. They may do this. And so fast forward to 100 years later, how does that impact us? Well, you have even some of the young ladies we talked about who have advanced degrees, and many of them will get with guys that might assemble or remind them of the black buck, or that might remind them of the oversexed or the black brute, if you will. And you'll wonder, well, gosh, why didn't you like that guy you went to law school with? What was wrong with him? And oh, he was too nice. And so some of these images also impact us where we don't believe that we deserve sustainable functional situations. Even when you have black people say, well, black people don't do this. Black people don't do what? I had the opportunity many years ago to interview Bill Cosby, and one of the things he said was that his harshest critics during the Cosby Show were black people, saying that this is not us, this is not real. John Johnson, in his memoir, talked about when he came out with Ebony and came out with positive images that black people said, this is not real. Why don't you show the real experience? So a lot of times we think that we deserve less. And this is perpetuated through a media and through images that continue to say that we're less than, we're undesirable, and it has an effect on us. Why do we continue to accept less compensation for equal work? Why do we continue to act as though we're helpless? We continue to consume media that intimates that message. But we're not the only victims of this media. There are other victims of this media from other cultures. That's why they're violent against us. You just recently put a report out on Your Black World, on the Your Black World network of sites, that said that Dr. Benjamin Mays, the guy who's the spiritual icon of the Morehouse Man, he noticed that when that film Birth of a Nation was shown on a particular campus he was studying at, that he saw almost immediately the white students be more violent towards the black students. So when we continue to put out media that says we can't do anything, so now we can't do anything, we're incompetent, we're shiftless, we become unworthy, undesirable. And so when you're at that level, it sort of makes it easier for you to do things that can harm yourself, as in your community, and for other people to do it as well.
Interested, interesting. Well, I remember, to your point, I remember once hearing a young black girl tell me. She asked me a real interesting question. She said, "Do you know anybody who's married?" And I said, "Yeah, I know a lot of people who are married." She said, "I don't know anybody who's married." And I thought that was such an interesting thing for a child to say, an interesting observation. Um, it does reflect to what you're saying about kind of seeing a distorted reality when it comes to ourselves and kind of embracing that, embracing the idea that we're meant to be second best, that we're not meant to have stability and prosperity, that we are, that we almost sometimes, I think, um, commit ourselves to the idea that we are meant to just struggle, you know,
Yes,
and
yes,
and not to even be disrespectful of the Black National Anthem, "Lift Every Voice and Sing." But if you analyze those lyrics, many of those lyrics are very much bent on the idea of talking about the difficult struggle that we've walked through, and we almost take pride in the fact that we've gone through horrible things, and but yet we were able to survive it, not really overcome it or conquer it, not fight back. There's not really in the Black National Anthem about fighting back. If you listen to the lyrics carefully, there's nothing in there about fighting back. There's nothing in there about who's actually causing the struggle. They talk about the blood and and the
of the slaughter.
in the slaughter and things like that. Exactly, but they never really talk about who did the slaughtering. There's
Mhm.
no conversation about, well, if you try to slaughter us again, we're gonna fight you back, because we've been sort of pushed into that kind of submission, where the struggle itself becomes the adversary. But even then, overcoming the struggle, I don't even know if we really know exactly what that really means. What it really means to truly conquer something. What it means to truly take ownership of your outcomes and of your destiny. That you're not supposed to struggle. You're not supposed to keep starting over again. And don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that our ancestors didn't do great things and overcome quite a bit. But
Mhm.
there is sort of an interesting lack of self
It
determination.
romanticizes it. It romanticizes it. We've been taught to believe in our community to a certain extent, either explicitly or implicitly, that success is just this ambiguous conclusion for a select few anointed, selected people. We've accepted that. And so this is what we should do. We should pivot. We should look at models that work. Our Jewish brothers and sisters, they don't say, woe is me, the Holocaust. They shoot towards excellence and say never again. I think that we have to consider repurposing our history and using it to keep us and make sure that we do what we have to do. Look, I may have had a deadbeat dad, but I'm going to use that experience to make sure that I'm a great father. And then, secondly, I think we should consume media that affirms our ambitions. If you want to be a wife, if you want to be a great woman in the world, if you want to be respected, it's not helpful to listen to these hoes ain't loyal. If you want to be a doctor or if you want to be a lawyer, you want to read books about people that look like you that became lawyers and overcame different things. You don't want to consume media that kills your soul. And I think that that's one of the biggest legacies of Birth of a Nation. That's one of the biggest legacy because it created those archetypes, and we see those archetypes of the black buck, the black brute, Debo. All that is a repurpose of that same type of characteristic. When you hear Lil Wayne say, "I want a red and thick red bone," well, that's the tragic mulatto. That's over 100 years old. We've been put forth these images over and over and over and over again. We Halle Berry is nothing new. She was talked about 100 years ago. So we have to be careful of the media images that we portray because I think that, like you said, we've accepted this bottom position when we don't have to.
So, what do you think about the show Empire?
I enjoy Empire, but I think it's bad to. I'm not the best person to reflect on Empire because I've had the opportunity to go to college. I've had the opportunity to be exposed to the canons of literature. I think for someone who hasn't had the opportunity to consume different types of media, they look at that. There's a study. I forget who did the study. Other cultures look at media to entertain. A lot of black people look at media as instruction. And so when you're not exposed to certain canons of literature, when you're not exposed to the Richard Wrights and the Baldwins and things of that nature, you don't have anything to counterbalance certain entertainment and certain media with. And so if those are the dominant inspirations in your life and the dominant influences, it can have an adverse effect. That's what I believe.
So, what do you think is the difference between black people who consume entertainment just as entertainment versus those who consume it as instruction? Because you have millions of white people that consume certain kinds of entertainment that may or may not be healthy for them. Um, and a lot of people will say things like, "Well, white people see media and it doesn't affect them, so why should black people respond a certain way?" What is your take on that? on that differential.
Well, I think it's true. I think in order for you to compete in a system, you have to understand the rules. And for certain people of privilege, they don't have to have certain considerations that we as African Americans have. We're not in a position of privilege. So we have to be very mindful and very purposeful in our steps. And I would say that listening to this type of music that's negative, not all of it's negative, but listening to this type of music certainly I think has an adverse effect. We can see it in the fact that many of our women are not married right now. We can see it in the fact that many of us, both male and female, accept less in life than we truly deserve because oftentimes we think that we deserve it. But it also affects other cultures as well. We've seen situations where the black man ended up dead and we looked at it and said, wow, that's harmless, or wow, they just had a conversation, or, and basically somebody ended up killing someone based off some of the adverse effects of that media as well. So I'm not saying that media is evil, but I think we have to be very strategic in how we use media to either affirm our identity or confirm some negative stereotypes that are not real.
I agree with you that media does have a unique influence on us. We consume more media than most people do,
Hmm.
on a per capita basis. And you will see lots of black people who will get their self perception off of shows that they watch.
Absolutely.
You even go back. I remember, hearing recently actually about a young woman who became an attorney who said, when I was young, I wanted to be Claire Huxtable.
Yeah.
And now you might hear a girl talk about wanting to be similar to the Basketball Wives, or
Or
you
Cookie
know
Lanes.
or Cookie. You're right, right. And I do, or I love Cookie because Cookie keeps it real. Keeping it real, I guess, means you reflect reality, which means Cookie acts like a real black woman. She's a real woman, and I'm not necessarily 100% sure. I don't know everything about Cookie's character, but I don't necessarily know how adequate of a model of a black woman she might represent. And again, it's not about telling black women who to be and what they're supposed to, how they're supposed to behave. But I think when you're talking about anybody, male or female, getting what they want out of life. If you want to have Cookie's life, then I guess you would emulate Cookie's behavior. But you can't emulate Cookie's behavior and then be disappointed that you get Cookie's life, right?
Absolutely.
So
And I would say in my own life that black women have been an enduring source of support, have been an enduring encouragement for me throughout my life. Whether it was my mother, my grandmother, my godmother, I've been able to depend on black women throughout my life. And whether it's people I know that have criminal backgrounds, they've called a black woman to bail them out. A black woman has kept money on their commissary, et cetera, et cetera. But yet the media portrays a totally different image of our women. And a lot of people say that that persists because they're the most vulnerable.
well, I agree. I mean, even back to the plantation. If I was thinking about the show Scandal, and I was thinking about the idea that you've got this attractive, very intelligent black woman who, is, from what I understand, the climax of her dating life is she gets to be the mistress of a powerful white man, a married powerful white man, and that's the plantation all over again. The
And that's the
plantation.
show I refuse. That's the show I refuse to watch.
Yeah, I mean
Say,
that's I mean the massa would emasculate the black man, make him powerless and weak and uninteresting to the black woman, and then say, hey baby, but you can be my side chick, So that's where you get a lot of these mulatto kids come
even
from.
now, now that that's going on, now that that's going on in the media where you have a lot of side chicks. Now you see that in constant conversation. Not to say it didn't happen all along. I think it's been happening all along. People have side people or what have you. But now it's almost gained mainstream embrace. If you look at things on social media, they'll say, "Oh, when you're with your side chick or when you're with your side piece," and things of that nature is becoming more embraced on a mainstream level. But one of the things that we'll talk about the power of media. One of the things I noticed when President Obama, for example, when he may do something that certain people in our community might not think is helpful towards our community. I would notice that I'm starting to see more memes and things of that nature on social media with him and his wife and all these images. Oh, strong, strong black brother and things of that nature to sort of affirm those things. I think that's very. I think it's very interesting how those things are placed during those periods of time. But I think that those media images still have an impact today. They're still showing up some type of way, and we've embraced them to a certain extent. We've embraced them in some of our bigger movies, in our bigger TV shows. One of the shows back in the day that I thought was a pretty good show was like Thelma, the show Thelma, Thea rather. I'm sorry, it was Thea. Thea didn't get like really embraced as a hit, even though I felt that it demonstrated a real depiction of a blue collar black woman keeping her family together, maintaining her dignity and maintaining respect in her home. But that's a show that didn't get embraced. A lot of times we like to say, as a community, oh, like even the whole Spike Lee, Tyler Perry debate. Well, Tyler Perry's films outperform Spike Lee's films. That's just a fact. So I think to a certain extent that we're kind of schizophrenic. We told Bill Cosby, your show's not real. But now we judge every show based off the Cosby show. We'll say, oh, this show is not the Cosby show. It was not. We're schizophrenic. So a lot of times we don't embrace the positive images. We say that that's not real. We say that they're not keeping it real, like you said. But then when these other shows come out, we say that's coonery, buffoonery. That's what we say. So even with Robert L. Johnson, when Robert L. Johnson came out with BET, he had a plethora of public affairs programming. Plethora. He had Teen Summit. He had a Sunday news program. He had BT Tonight with Tavis Smiley. Had BT News with Jackie Reed and things of that nature. But those particular outlets did not get the level of support. He had YSB magazine. He had Emerge magazine. He supported all those things, but when we came out with the videos, that's when it became this attractive asset. So on one end, we'll say, well, this particular show or this particular thing supports black people is not real. But then when that's gone, we praise it afterwards. So we have to make a decision to continue to affirm media that affirms who we are and that affirms the positivity that we want to go forward because it has an impact. It has an impact because we have to live with those images. We have to live
Well,
with it.
well, I think that it does. It does make a difference. You're absolutely correct. One thing I will say though is, when we talk about, when you say we didn't like it at first, and then we look back, now we do like it. We have to make. I think we be very careful uh, about avoiding some this assumption that black people are one person. That
Mm-hmm.
like if I'm talking about Boyce Watkins or I'm talking about Zach Rinkins, I could say, well, Zach in 1992 said this, but now Zach in 2015 said that. That's the same person compared twice, right? But when you talk about a whole community, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you had opposition to the Cosby Show, but you had a lot of support. That's why the show was number one on MSNBC, right? Or not? I'm sorry, on NBC.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe the same people that supported it then support it now. Maybe some people have converted one way or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we can characterize, my opinion. I think we'd have to be careful about characterizing the whole community as saying things one way, or the whole community having to make one decision. Because I don't really know. I don't think the whole community is ever going to be on the same page. Well, you look at white people, for example. White people have, they literally have been so divided since they got
Absolutely.
here that they killed each other over various issues, over slavery, for example. They were killing each other over slavery at the start of the Civil War. That's how it got started in bloody Kansas, when all the white people started moving out there to decide if it was going to be a free state or a slave state. So they started, if they were like, if you believe in slavery, I'm gonna shoot you. Boom. You don't support slavery, I'm gonna kill you. Boom. And that was astonishing to me because none of these people were slaves, but they were killing each other over slavery.
But I
So
thank you. I thank you for pointing that out, and that's the truth. Now, most people say black people don't stick together, but nobody sticks together because just like you thoroughly pointed out that there are sects within communities and within races, and so when people say we don't stick together, I believe that black people are human. We have the same good and bad qualities and characteristics about us that every other group of people has. We have our outliers and we have our bottom feeders within our community. Now, that's another myth that's perpetuated through media that somehow we don't stick together. And that's not exactly the truth relative to other segments of our population.
And, well, I think it's a very good point, and I think when you talk about, our humanity, earning our humanity by, you use a term. I remember you hearing you once talk about terms like buying our humanity, which I like. I actually like that term a lot. I think that to some extent, we're still on a quest to gain our humanity, and I think part of the humanity is doing as you said, being human. Human means that some of us believe this, some of us believe that. But even within those particular groups, there is an effort to form coalitions, and so if you think about all like-minded people who want to see progress, then there is constructive criticism there in terms of saying, you're not forming the coalitions you need to form to get things done. You're not going to get every Negro on your team, but you can get a million of them, or 2 million, right?
But I think deep in our psyche, and some of this has been contributed to by media images, is that we're still like one of the archetypes in Birth of a Nation is this dutiful black man, so dutiful. We're still in America. American civility is always at the expense of black people. I don't want to say always, but in many times it's at the expense of us. Oh, if you want something on a national agenda, hey, that might upset people and that might offend people if you want something. Oh, we'll get to you the second term. We don't want to offend too many people that we don't get to a second term. And so this continues to perpetuate that myth that somehow we're not worthy. We're not worthy to, like Beyonce once said it, say my name, say my name. Just hopefully we're gonna serve everybody and it'll trickle down to you and things of that nature. And long as you be cool and you be all right, it'll be fine. Even when we're getting killed in the streets, sometimes the response has to be measured. It has to be cool because you don't want to offend anyone. You don't want to offend anyone. And
Well,
so those are images that continue to be perpetuated through the media because which media figures strongly speak out against this? Like which strong media figures that have the influence and the clout speak out against this in a strong way? Most of them have to take an egalitarian approach. I heard one, I don't want to mention her name, but I heard one national journalist say there's no levels to suffering. People suffer. Well, we know that if three people get stopped by a car, if the white person gets stopped by a car, they may not, they're less likely to get a ticket. If a Hispanic person is stopped by a car, they may get harassed. If a black person gets stopped by a cop, something stronger will happen. We have data that backs that up. And so we do need voices that challenge those media images, but in the situations where we have control over a particular thing, we also need to be mindful that we have the power to create media. Just like you're doing with the Black Wall Street Project, we have the power to choose which type of books that we read. We have the power to choose what media we consume. We have the power to choose what books and what audio tapes we read. And so we need to be mindful that the majority of that media that we consume affirms our ambitions. That's what I believe.
well, I agree with you, man, and I think that everything you said is well purposed and well thought out and should be listened to. So I want to say thank you very much for a great conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, this is Mr. Zachary Rinkins, and Zachary. I want to ask Zach if he has a website or a book or something that you guys can check out in order to support him. What you got out there, man?
Absolutely. You can find out about me at zachrinkins.com. That's ZACHRINKINS.com.
Okay, all right. So check him out at zachrinkins.com. And he does a lot of great, he provides a lot of good information on financial literacy as well as many, many other topics. As you can see, he is a diverse minded individual. He can hit a lot of good stuff in a lot of good ways. And he's also going to be a husband very soon. So
Yes.
congratulations on that too, man.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. October. It's happening.
All right, all right. Well, way to go, man. Way to go. Black women, you gotta love a black woman. So, well, you don't have to, but I respect it. In fact, I am openly biased. I believe black women should be put at the front of the line. No disrespect to women who are not black, but black women need black men to stand up for them. That was really the whole tenet behind the Million Man March, and I am committed to that idea, and I know you are too. So, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. You have a good one.
You too, man. You too. Everybody up. Once again, this is Zachary Rinkins from ZachRinkins.com. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.